Okay, we'll call this meeting to order for the discussion of personnel matters.
Okay, this is Kathy's first time as chair of this committee, and it's Meredith's first time attending. Normally, we would also have Alita and Chris Smith from the Northside Library staff. Chris is out of town, and Alita, I'm not sure. I just sent her a message to see if she can jump on. But the board staff personnel committee's role is to make recommendations to the library board on matters of personnel for JMRL. So annually, they review requests for changes or new positions from JMRL's managers. And then also they work on issues of compensation, just finished the work on a compression algorithm a few years ago, and then most recently finished work on a recommendation for staff and crafting a budget that includes a $15 minimum wage. So those are the types of things that this committee gets involved in. Meredith, Kathy has been on the committee for a while, right, Kathy? A few years? I can't remember when you joined. At any rate, Kathy is the resident expert if you have questions for her. So
it's been a few years, correct?
A few years, yeah. This committee will report back to the full board on the 25th of this month, and I'm hoping that we will have a recommendation on how to proceed in terms of which of these requests to put forward towards the budget for fiscal year 23. So, Kathy, is it okay if I share my screen and we start talking about them? You might not be able to see, but I'll read them out for you.
Yes, I have it printed out, but
okay, good.
You can, yeah, go on.
Okay, we got a total of 6 requests in for personnel changes for the operational budget for next year. I'm going to go through them briefly, and then I will go through and give some of the justification that managers gave for the requests. The first is a regional cost. This is the only one of these 6 which is a shared cost for each jurisdiction, and it's to increase the hours for JMRL's second courier position from 16 hours up to 30 hours. The second of these is at the Louisa Branch Library, and it's a 1 hour increase for a branch support position from 19 hours to 20 hours. The third of which is a request in Scottsville to increase a branch support position from 20 hours to 25. The fourth is to upgrade a position at the Gordon Avenue branch. There's a children's position that the manager would like to turn into a young adult professional librarian position. That one also would need approval from the staff's compensation committee. So if this body is okay with it and it makes it through the budget, it still needs to go through the staff steps there. That hasn't begun yet. There's also a request for additional hours for a substitute position at Gordon Avenue, and then a request for a new position. This is the only entirely new position on here, and that is a 20-hour bookmobile specialist position. So I'll tell you a little bit about each one. These aren't in order. The first request here is for the 30 hours for the courier position. The courier position is a pivotal position for JMRL. We have 1 full-time employee that does this, and then currently a 16-hour position that helps supplement it. We do run 7 days a week. This is getting books and materials between each location. It keeps equipment, supplies, items, books flowing to the branches. Also delivers holds to patrons so that they get them from one branch to another. So all the magic of a regional library system is supported by these courier positions. We have had some structural issues in the last 2 years during COVID, basically, where we have had at one time or another, 1 or both of these positions unavailable. We had somebody leave for another job. We had somebody that was off for a while. And it really is a problem for the library system. So we had to get creative about cross-training and figuring out other folks to drive the vehicle around, including myself last summer. So the goal here is to bolster up that second position to provide some redundancy. Also, we need it for JMRL needs it to bring other materials around, like the Friends of the Library donations that come through to branches, and then also just equipment that gets shipped to the central library. So the manager notes that it's important that we have this be a more attractive position with benefits. This would allow the substitute courier to fill in more easily when necessary and give flexibility for moving a surplus of maintenance equipment across the system. This is tied into the 5-year plan goal 3, staffing, to hire and retain a sufficient number of appropriately trained individuals. So we're looking to make the courier operation more stable and benefit the system as a whole. So I mentioned that this cost would be a regional cost. It would be split between the 5 jurisdictions per their 3-year average circulation. So that's largely an Albemarle cost at 60, about, I think, 55 to 60%, and then Charlottesville 20 to 25%, and then Louisa, Greene, and Nelson for a share of it. The next request was from the Louisa branch manager to add 1 hour to a 19-hour position. The reasoning here is that 20 hours brings benefits to this position. It's currently an unbenefited position. And the goal here is to attract and retain qualified candidates to meet the demands of the Louisa Library. And again, this is tied into goal number 3 in the 5-year plan: hire and retain a sufficient number of appropriately trained employees to provide superior service. This upgraded position would allow for better recruitment and retention of qualified positions by adding partial benefits. So it's prorated benefits at 20 hours. The next request came from Scottsville. It's to add 5 hours to a branch support position. Currently, the Scottsville Library is open 56 hours a week, which is a large amount for only having 2 full-time employees there. And they have a total of 140 hours of staff. 148 if they consider that they have a substitute working a regular schedule. In order to really get 3 people on staff at all times, they would need 168 hours. So they're below what they would need to constantly have 3 people. Sometimes they, you have to have at least 2 people in the branch at all times. Okay, so the issue arrives when one of the 2 full-time employees need to have an obligation elsewhere, if they need to attend a meeting, or they do a program, or they're sick, or they, God forbid, wanted to take vacation. It's difficult to staff the branch. Both the full-time employees love interacting with the patrons, but it leaves very little time for doing the other things they should be doing to promote branch services throughout the community. Really what they need down the road is another 20-hour employee or a full-time employee there. That's probably not in the cards right now. They're not asking for that because they also don't have the space for it at the time, right now. So what they're looking for is 5 more hours to start building up one of the part-time positions. They have, in the last few years with Albemarle County, we have traded some of the substitute hours to make these part-time positions, and now we just need a little bit more work out of them. Okay, the next request is to upgrade a position to a professional librarian position. And the narrative says that children's programming and services are highly successful at the Gordon Avenue Library. There's a gap in service, though, to the growing tweens and teens population there. A professional whose time is primarily focused on developing teen program and maintaining the young adult collection would offer the opportunity to continue stellar support to youngsters as they grow into young adulthood, addressing their unique needs and interests. And the manager there tied this into several 5-year plan goals. Goal 1, Objective 7, which is to develop a public engagement strategy. The one about staffing, which I've mentioned before, and then strengthening the collection across various age groups. And then the request for increased substitute hours is, I think, for greater coverage for that staff there. It's just to have 100 extra hours during the year to bring in somebody to help man the front desks there. And finally, there's a request for the bookmobile. Excuse me. Need a cough drop. And the goal here is related to the 5-year plan goal to develop an outreach department across JMRL. So the current bookmobile manager is also our outreach supervisor and supervises one 20-hour employee. They only serve currently the city of Charlottesville and Albemarle County, mostly Albemarle County. So they are able to serve in the city about 20% of their stops. I'd like to see that increased by adding a part-time position in order to more fully serve both the city and the county. I don't have that actual goal. Here it is. I don't have it on me. Sorry. Krista, do you have the 5-year plan open?
I don't, but I could.
Thank you. Okay, so looking at those requests, without putting budgetary figures on them, the Personnel Committee's goal is to decide what would move forward to the budget process, basically. And if there are any questions about any of these positions, we would take them back to staff to get answered between now and the board meeting. And I would be interested in coming away with a prioritized list here of what the Personnel Committee thinks would be the most beneficial of these 6 things in case later on during budget time we had to make some tough choices.
Does the Central Branch have a young adult librarian?
Yes, Central
Yes.
Branch has a young adult librarian, Crozet Branch has a young adult librarian, and Northside has a young adult.
Yeah. David, regarding the bookmobile, it has to do with outreach services objective number 8 by the end of year 22, fiscal year 22. It talks about extension services, including staffing, space, and equipment, you know, to expand the outreach services. And there was also a goal regarding reaching daycares, you know, things like that.
Okay, thank you. So Kathy or Meredith or Krista, does anyone have any questions about any of those requests and what the particular positions would be doing or what roles they would be filling?
It sounds like Gordon Avenue has gotten a lot busier. Is that correct?
Yeah, their children's programming especially has really bloomed in the last few, well, pre-pandemic. They've seen quite an influx of families coming into that area.
Yeah,
So
they
we're
have a
not
pretty dynamic young children's program. And I think what's happening is, you know, those kids are aging up and now, you know, the expectation is, wait a minute, what do you have for the young adults?
Okay. I just was asking also about their needing more circulation support. I was just wondering if they've seen I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers, the circulation numbers in front of me, but I was curious if it had taken a big step up, or is this something that, you know, they've wanted for a while and the pandemic kind of slowed things down, but now it's more of an issue.
I think the pandemic exposed everywhere the need for more highly cross-trained staff, you know, so I think that they're looking for a plug and play position here where somebody could come and shelve materials and they could do circulation. It's mostly for coverage, I think. So just for your knowledge and for Kathy's too, in case she hasn't heard the spiel in a while, the substitute employees at JMRL are what that means. You know, they are not full regular employees. They're not benefited employees. They don't go through the evaluation or training process that other employees do. They work at the bottom of the pay scale, basically. And they're meant to be called upon just like a substitute teacher would if somebody can't make it in or if there's a gap that's coming up that we know about. So the most common use for them is when there's going to be staff either performing a program or away for some reason or on vacation or sick. When we see scenarios where substitutes are being used on a very regular basis, like scheduled every week, then JMRL's goal is to try and turn those into regular employees so that they get the benefits associated with that. It's better for the employee, it's better for the organization. In this case, I think Camille is seeking just basically that help when nobody else can make it in there.
Does Scottsville get the same sort of support or from other, I mean, you're saying that you have to have 2 people there and they only have
2 full-time employees at Scottsville.
So what happens if one of them is sick?
Well, they do have substitutes available there.
Okay.
And then they have several part-time employees as well. But when somebody is sick or on vacation in Scottsville, it's a real problem for the reasons that Ann Lindbergh, the manager, sent me. You know, they just, they're open a lot of hours for a branch that size.
Yep.
And frequently, you know, when was that? A few weeks ago, we had to send somebody down in order to cover because it was kind of a last minute thing, but still there was not enough coverage to have 2 people there. And it's our stated goal to never have just one person at a service, you know, in a building, basically.
That makes sense.
Any other questions? Kathy, any questions about any of those?
No, I don't have any questions. I think maybe what we need to do right now is to decide which ones we feel would be the most important ones to attack.
Yeah, I agree with that.
If there any, if there aren't any more questions, I'd like to start there. David, back to you.
That sounds good. Organizationally, I know that a previous board, so Meredith, before you were on, when we had a presentation about the courier positions, they were pretty shocked by the amount of work and the lack of personnel that we had on it. So, you know, that at the time they were in support. That was a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic. Kathy would remember that. And we had Brittany Eversberg and one of the couriers come and talk about, you know, what the run is and how it works. So I also know what a hard time we have had this summer and the previous summer when there's been an issue where we didn't have one of the employees there. It has been a real problem.
Yeah, as opposed to the other positions, it's harder you can't easily swap somebody in or out, you know, to cover. And we had to hire temporary driver services, which isn't really the best either, because there's a fair amount of training. If you don't know our system, you know, that takes a couple days in itself just to get someone from an outside company to come in, and plus it's expensive. So what we learned during the pandemic was it's not real easy to swap someone in, where some of these other positions, worst comes to worst, we can send someone from another branch. Or I know here at Central, we've covered Gordon book groups because the branch manager had to be on the desk and couldn't do the book group. So we could do it, you know, remotely from here. So I think the courier is the number one thing, just because it's so hard to swap out. And when it doesn't work, the whole system kind of shuts down.
I agree with you.
Well, that sounds reasonable to make that number one. I also feel that the bookmobile position sounds really important to me. It sounds like as part of the 5-year plan, there was an emphasis on reaching out to populations that aren't necessarily using the library right now. And that sounds like there's lots of ideas of what you could do if you had 20 more hours from somebody.
Yeah, we get a lot of requests to do things like fairs and festivals and things like that, Meredith. And right now it's on top of kind of the regular bookmobile schedule. So if there's a Saturday event, which frequently that's where the bookmobile can really make a big impact. And right now that means juggling the services during the week or, you know, I don't even know. I think they usually just do comp time or they juggle things around, but it's not a 6-day-a-week service right now. And with another person, they could probably do more, you know, for sure,
outreach
for all these things that we're invited to.
Can they create library cards on the bookmobile as well?
For sure.
Yeah.
It's a full service branch. Yeah, you can pick up holds, you can return materials, you can make cards. It's a traveling branch.
No, and I like the idea of them reaching out more to Charlottesville. I'm sure there's plenty of places in Charlottesville, including the schools, that would love to have them visit.
And the fact that we have a new bookmobile also adds a little bit of oomph to it, so that neighborhoods, and I do know that the bookmobile, if you request it from your neighborhood association, they will also come to your community. So I also agree that the bookmobile should go second.
Okay.
So the Louisa branch support going from 19 to 20, that's just going to be paid for by Louisa.
That's going to be a Louisa County decision about whether or not to support that.
But then do we pay for the benefits, or do they pay for the benefits?
They pay for that as well.
Okay.
They pay for all the personnel costs there.
Yeah.
I know that particular position is empty right now. It was empty and they filled it, and it didn't, you know, It's not a very, at 19 hours, it's a hard job to fill.
Right. So we're trying to make it more attractive
We're
so
trying to
they
make it
can
more
have more stability and that sort of thing. Well, I think that's very, very important as well.
Yeah, in the end, though, you hit the nail on the head. It'll be a budgetary decision for Louisa County. When we present JMRL's budget to them next year, I'll make a line and it says this amount of dollars is for this 1 hour, and then give them all the reasons for adding it.
And the Albemarle, the Scottsville one is pretty much 100% Albemarle one.
Correct. Yes, thank you. I should point that out. Right. So Scottsville is entirely an Albemarle cost. Gordon Avenue is split about 50-50 between Charlottesville and Albemarle.
And Gordon Avenues is one of the more expensive ones, probably, right, David? The children's specialist to young adult librarian is probably going to be.
Well, the most expensive request here is the new position for the bookmobile, because there are no dollars on that.
It's a new position, right?
With benefits, so that's definitely the most expensive one. The Gordon Avenue one, since it's already a 40-hour position, it's only really a salary increase. So while it's up there, it's not. And right, this is on the budget committee, but just to help you think about it, I think it would be about $7,000 for that upgrade.
So it's not a specific person being promoted, it would be a different position.
It would be a new position, but currently there is someone in the children's specialist position that would be promoted.
That has a library degree and that would qualify. Okay.
That's when I said earlier it would have to go through the staff compensation committee. That's the part that would have to go through the staff.
Okay, that makes total sense.
Whether or not to just promote somebody or to go out to go out to the market for it.
Yeah.
The Scottsville position, I'll just give you basic. These are very ballpark figures, but the additional cost for the courier is going to be somewhere around $23,000 probably, because it does add benefits because it jumps from that 16 to 20. For the bookmobile, about the same, $23,000. For the hours in Louisa, it's about 6,800. Just that jump from 19 to 20, it's like only one more hour a week, but it's getting the benefits on there. The 5 extra hours in Scottsville would be about 4,600. Gordon Avenue's upgrade would be about 6,800, and the 100 sub hours about $1,500. And keep in mind that all these are going to be not in competition with, but the board's stated goal is to get to the $15 minimum wage. So if we get into a situation where you can't have both things, likely the $15 minimum wage, which is a much more expensive proposition, would get the bulk of the attention at least. Okay. So any thoughts on? So Meredith kind of made a good point there that Louisa and Scottsville, those two are primarily those jurisdictions' decisions. That it doesn't require the other 4 jurisdictions really weighing in. They either will go for it or they won't. So it's not that removes them from the priorities list, but it kind of puts them in a separate category, where they don't require the same level of cooperation. But are there any thoughts on I would say for me, probably the sub position is the lowest priority. It's just not, it's the cheapest, so it might be the easiest to do. It might be something that we can do even without a change in the budget next year. So any objections to moving that kind of to the bottom?
No.
I mean, that's fine. I do worry that they don't have enough help, and that's always frustrating for the workers and also patrons who try to come in and need help. And
yeah, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a branch or location that would say, "Oh yeah, we've got all the staff we need.
We're totally covered.
We're totally fine here."
Yeah, I understand. I do think that the idea of upgrading that position and having a young adult librarian is really important. Just like you're saying, I think that the library has a reputation for having really wonderful young children programs. And then I think you might start losing them in those teen years. It's really important that they continue reading. So
Kathy, any
know.
thoughts on that?
I agree. I am a supporter of the young group, and I had my child in the young group there. Plus, the neighborhoods that surround Gordon Avenue, a lot of foot traffic. So I think that one should go on the list as being a priority.
Okay. And then that leaves just kind of deciding between, I mean, I would love it to see this position in Louisa. Just it's the right thing to do to get good employees and to treat them well, and to it's such a tough. It's so hard to hire right now.
Yeah.
That anything we can do to help Louisa hire and keep good employees there.
Well, keeping it as number 4, or if you have to move it up, I completely understand. I think the smaller branches, it makes a big difference. So, having that employee.
My concern about Scottsville is safety. We talked about that at one other meeting. It's small, but in the event that someone doesn't come to work, you still have to look at the position of transporting someone from another branch there. So that concerns me. I also support Louisa. So right now I'm torn between the two, where they would fit.
Well, in some ways, Kathy, as we were saying, one's a Louisa decision, one's an Albemarle decision. So I think we can tell the board we support both of them, and they'll both make it in the budget, and then it becomes a budgetary decision for Louisa and Albemarle.
Kathy and I are both representing Charlottesville, so.
I hear you, Kathy. That has come up in the past, and I know that there have been times at the Scottsville branch, particularly, where there has only been one person there, and we, as an organization, definitely don't want that, and it's for the exact reasons that you just laid out. Bye, Krista. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Really, the long-term solutions in Scottsville are for more positions, but they have these 2 20-hour positions, so getting those built up over time. And I do have, Scottsville is the next place where we really need to look at after Central, of course. Scottsville, we need to look at the building, because I don't know when the last time you were down there, Kathy, is, but down the road, they're going to convert a tire factory that was down there, we think, into a pretty big residential place. So all of a sudden there's gonna be a lot more foot traffic there. Not right now,
Yeah.
5 years from now, 10 years from now.
And it's very small.
Yeah, it's physically very small.
Yeah.
So you can't add too much more staff because you can't fit too many more bodies in the building.
Especially during a pandemic.
Especially during a pandemic, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, in that case, we've already got the partial benefits for that position since it starts at 20. So we're not talking about as big of a lift. Is that correct?
Correct. It doesn't change any of the benefits cost is the same. It's just the salary for the extra 5 hours. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. So I think what we really want to do is change this from a bulleted list into there we go.
To numbered. There you go.
And then if we're okay with this, then at the board meeting next Monday, Kathy, I'll bring this up and you just say, we met and here's where we landed in terms of priorities. And are we going to recommend that the budget committee consider all 6 of these in the budget?
I thought that was the consensus.
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that sounds, I think that sounds, they all sound really important.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
I think with prioritizing them, then they see which ones we really felt strongly about. But I think all of them should be presented.
Yeah, and I have high hopes that maybe, because the costs are not that large for some of them. So hopefully we'll be able to make some of these actualize.
Yes.
A lot of committees to get through, David.
Well, it's, you know, we want to make sure we get everybody's input.
That's right. That's right.
But yeah, it sounds like we're all on the same page here, and I'll call Alita and clue her in on what we discussed. And then on Monday next week, we'll review this with the full board.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Anything else?
No. Are we adjourned?
Yeah, that's up to you. You're the boss.
No. I feel that we have met our goals, so I feel that this meeting should be adjourned unless there are other questions.
I don't think so. Thank you,
Okay.
Kathy. Thank you for
Okay,
calling
we'll
in.
see
And
you on Monday.
see you Monday.
Okay.
All right. See you then.
Meredith.
Bye.
Bye.
And welcome, Meredith.
Thank you, Kathy.